Hi, welcome to the Chad Bozarth Show. Thanks for listening.
Okay.
Beth, thank you so much for joining me.
You are welcome. Thanks for having me. What an honor.
When I first met you, was it, I think 2010 maybe, in El Salvador.
Probably, yeah. 2010.
How long have you been in El Salvador?
I have been physically living here for 17 years, but I've been working here for 20. I initially
Wow.
went back and forth 3 months here, 3 months in the States, but I've been here 17 years.
How did that start exactly? How did that start?
It started with a youth group trip. I was a
Mm.
youth leader in my church, and they took a trip here, a 1 week short-term ministry trip. And on the third day, God gave me a vision of working with the children here in El Salvador. And when we went home, I was just in love and on fire for El Salvador. And I noticed everyone else who was on the trip kind of eased back into their normal life. And my life was just completely disrupted. I couldn't get it out of my head. So after about a year of prayer and trying to shake the feeling, I went and talked to my pastor, and his exact words were, Beth, that trip rocked your world and everyone knows it but you. So it was about a year later when I finally was like, okay, God, if this is what you want, this is what I'll do. So that's what I did. Moved to El Salvador.
What did so what did that look like? Was
Uh,
there a moment you decided, or was it more of kind of a gradual thing, or
Um,
what did that look
well,
like?
what happened was I was a business owner, and I had 2 group homes for delinquent teenage girls.
Mm.
And I had 2 foster daughters who I had adopted who were, and then by that time, I had 3 grandchildren. And so I was pretty much tied to the United States. And I was just kind of like, no, it just doesn't make sense to leave. But it just felt like everything around me was falling to pieces. It just seemed like nothing was going right in my life anymore. And I can't even explain, like there was nothing horrible in my life. It just felt like things weren't right. I couldn't get settled. And so it was when I talked to my pastor, because it was like he once in a sermon said, and I don't know if Pastor Kurt Seberg is who I'm talking about. In one of his sermons, he said, um, the thing you pray about the most is what you're passionate about, is what you should be focusing your energy on. And I spent hours
Mm.
praying, hours a day praying for El Salvador and for the kids I met and for the people here. And so after that sermon is when I talked to him, and I just said, look, I can't. It's been a year and everyone else has gone on with their lives. Granted, they were teenagers, but even the other youth leaders, and I couldn't shake it. And so it just looked like, with the counsel of my pastor and some women from my church, and we did a lot of prayer, and it was the only way that I felt like I was going to be content. And so once I decided to move here, of course, then I had a business. I had to decide what to do with my business. Do I sell it, or do I let my 2 daughters were grown, but do I let them take over? Do I sell it? I sold it. I had 2 houses. I had things that I had to take care of. Grandkids, that was the hardest thing ever, was for me to decide I was going to leave my grandchildren.
Mm.
Um, I still get emotional, even though they're in my life still. But yeah, so it was just a constant nagging, I guess. Like God wasn't going to let me get away with not doing this. And I'm so glad, because my life has just been incredible here.
Mm. That's amazing.
Uh,
What did that so you're boarding the plane. Did you have any idea of how long you would be down there? Were you making kind of a determination? Like what was that like?
I got on the plane. I had no idea. I knew one person here. I had no ministry. I had one friend here, and I had no clue. So, my mentor at the time, Sherry Rapp, told me to give it 6 weeks, because at the time I was thrilled to come here right up until the moment I said goodbye to my oldest granddaughter, who was 3 at the time.
Hmm.
Right up until that moment, and then I was like, no, I can't do this. I cannot do this. and my mentor, I was at her house, and somebody, even I couldn't even find a ride to the airport. And so somebody I didn't even know offered to take me to the airport. That's how I left. I was just like, gosh, I don't even have a friend going with me to comfort me on my ride. You know, it was a complete stranger that took me, someone from my church, but somebody I did not know. And so as I was saying goodbye to my middle daughter and my oldest grandchild, who was 3, I just looked at my mentor and I said, I can't do this. I can't. And she said, Beth, you know what? You have a one-way ticket. Just go, give it 6 weeks. If at the
Mm.
6 weeks you feel like you've made a mistake, come back. You can stay. She had an extra room at her house because by then I had sold everything. Right,
Wow.
my winter coat. I sold my winter coat, um, and it was October, so it was getting a little
Because
chilly.
where are you from originally?
Originally, I'm from Michigan, but I left
Uh,
from Pennsylvania. I was living in, so I'm from the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. You know, we're used to the cold weather, but I did actually sell my winter coat before I left, just trying to get fun, you know, enough funds to survive. And so I went thinking maybe I'll do 6 weeks. And then yeah, it was a tough transition. And at the end of 6 weeks, I was ready to come home. But I had a great mentor and teacher, and she encouraged me the whole way. And it's mostly because of her that I lasted even that 6 weeks. Now 17, she's still in my life. She's still a good friend. And 17 years later, I'm still here. So yeah,
mm.
those were very difficult, trying times for me. But obedience to God is foremost in my life, very important to me. And so sometimes, you know, I always tell the kids here, you know, when I'm teaching them, that the Bible doesn't promise us an easy road. The Bible
Mm.
guarantees that we're going to have struggles, and we're going to suffer. So I often believe, like, the more you're struggling, the more obedient perhaps you're being.
Mm.
So yeah, but it was not easy.
It's so wild too because you just obeyed and went, you know, and you've been down there for so long.
Yeah.
Like, did you know Spanish when you moved down there?
I, I didn't, I knew how to say no. And, you know, Sesame Street Spanish is what I knew.
Yeah.
Peligro. That's whatever Grover taught me, that's what I knew. So no, I didn't speak the language. I didn't attempt to speak the language because it was kind of like, once I decided I was coming, it all happened very quickly. So it's not like
Mm.
I took that year where God was kind of nagging me. It's not like I took that year and thought, well, what if maybe I should prepare myself? I didn't, because in my head, you know, I had a business. I was engaged to be married. Um,
Mm.
and I had my kids and my grandkids. So in my life was situated. I just couldn't see myself actually going through with moving. So I didn't prepare. I didn't learn Spanish. I didn't um, look for ministries here that I could serve with. I just winged it, which is so different. That's not me. I'm a very organized and structured person. Like, I can tell you everything I'm going to do for the next 2 months from 5 a.m. to midnight every day. I mean, I'm very structured. So that was so out of the ordinary for me. But I don't know, for some reason, that's how it happened.
What were those first 6 weeks like as you were trying to get acclimated to this foreign country? Totally, I mean, kind of, yeah, you didn't need your winter coat in El Salvador, did you?
No, no.
What was like, did you get connected with anybody? Like, I'm just trying to envision you walking the streets of San Salvador. Like, what did that, what did that look
Well,
like?
I did have a friend here, and his family kind of adopted me. So it wasn't like I was completely alone. Although I didn't speak, he spoke some English. So it helped me. It's not like, but I couldn't communicate. I remember once going to the grocery store, and yes, walking the streets, because I was terrified to drive here. That's a whole nother issue. I had a car, but I didn't drive probably for the first 6 months I was here. So there was a grocery store maybe 5 blocks away from my apartment that I would walk to, and I went there. And first of all, you know, the convenience of the grocery stores in the United States compared to here, like, in the United States, pretty much anything you want, you can find. So if for example, if I wanted a loaf of rye bread, or whole wheat bread or whole wheat noodles. And then to go to the grocery store here and they just don't have, like, there might be one type of bread or two types of bread, or you want a
Mm.
specific, my favorite cereal is Cinnamon Life. So to go to the store, comfort food when you're in a foreign country, for me anyway, food really, that would make me feel better. But to go to the grocery store and then find like there's three types of cereals and none of them are, there's no Cinnamon Life here, so it was difficult. But I did, went to the grocery store and they always say, and to this day, 17 years later, I really don't know what they're saying, but they always ask you, are you paying cash or credit? Of course, I didn't know efectivo or tarjeta. I didn't know what that meant. So I'm just nodding yes to everything. And they're like, well, which is it? Cash or credit? And I'm just like, yes. And then they always say something at the end. And I think it has something to, like, I think it says something like, have a good travel well on your way out this door or something. But they would say that. And I did learn the word igualmente, which means the same to you. So they would say that whole spiel and I would be like, oh, the same to you. And then they would all kind of look and laugh. So I just learned, and I learned, of course, when I first came here, this is how long I've been here. There was no such thing. There were no smartphones. There was no Google
Wow.
search on your phones. Like today, even today, I was trying to find a mixer, because the mixer, not a kitchen mixer, but for microphones. And because our board broke at church. And so today, because I didn't know it was called a console, I probably didn't know English or Spanish what it was called. I could just Google the picture and I show them the picture now, so, but back then you couldn't do it. So I remember trying to buy a loaf of bread and I knew the word for bread was pan, but bread, like sandwich bread, is not called that. It's called bun
Mm.
bread. So even trying to find a loaf of bread, where do you sell your bread? And then they're all showing me these little teeny tiny rolls, which we would call a roll. So yeah, that's the first 6 weeks was challenging if I was by myself, which I did spend a lot of time alone. But like I said, I did have my friend, my family, his family took me in and they were very helpful, protective of me.
So as you're getting down there, getting acclimated, what did ministry start to look like as far as um what was your heart to act to do? Why you came down there and how did that play out?
Well, I first started going to different orphanages here.
Hmm.
I have a background in youth and counseling youth and things like that. Of course, couldn't counsel anybody yet because I couldn't speak Spanish. But so I went to a few different orphanages to see, did they just need like maybe an English teacher, or if they
Hmm.
just needed someone to help cook or snuggle babies or whatever. So I did find a ministry that they were willing to let me go in and teach English to their kids. They had 3 orphanages. And then I also went to the government orphanages and they
Hmm.
allowed me to go and teach English. But it ended up being like the orphanage I ended up with was maybe, I think it was once or twice a week for an hour.
Hmm.
I just remember one day going home, and then the government orphanage was once a week for an hour. And I remember going home one day and just, I never cried so much in my life as that
Hmm.
6 weeks. And I just remember saying to God, is this why I'm here, to teach English for 4 hours a week? So however it worked out, I was only doing 4 hours a week of ministry. Because I remember specifically that prayer saying to God, am I only here to do 4 hours of ministry a week? My friend and I opened up a church, a youth, and we actually ended up having over 100 youth come to our church. So we had a huge youth group in Nehapa, and that was
Wow.
very successful. But then what happened was the leaders, the way the church was being led wasn't biblical, and I really I'm just the kind of person, I like to live my life biblically. And so
Hmm.
I ended up separating from that ministry because it was just too many, teaching the kids one thing and then the leaders doing other things.
Yeah.
So I separated from that. And then, from there, from that orphanage is where God started, like the orphanage that I was teaching English at ended up closing their doors. And so some of those, it was teen mothers, and some of them ended up on the street. A couple of the boys ended up on the street. And so I
Hmm.
come in, and then that's where pretty much my ministry began, was just um, with that unfortunate event of that orphanage closing its doors. I think we ended up with, I know we had 16 kids in total in my house. I don't know exactly remember how it breaks down between mothers and kids, but I did take in those teen moms. And then once, and then everything just kind of followed much more easily. I was acclimated then.
Hmm. Wh- How did you how did you do that as far as I mean, there's no manual for that, right? Like
No, there was not.
like loving people, and I don't know, it just blows my mind. Um I don't even know how to ask the question. I'm just trying to think because I'm kind of like you as far as I like to, well, actually my wife would laugh if she heard me say I like to plan. I don't I'm a horrible planner, but I like to preemptively solve problems before they happen, I guess
Right.
is what it's, right?
Yeah. Plan
And
A, B, and C always.
yes.
Sometimes
And
the D if C looks iffy.
yeah, let me try to avoid a potential problem before it starts.
Right.
How do you
Well,
minister in that situation?
um, I don't even, I don't know. I just, you know, I'm a very, like I said, I'm a very structured person, but I have to wake up every morning and say to myself, the key word today is flexibility. Because
Hmm.
99% of the time, things are not going to go according to my plan. And so it just takes a lot of prayer. And I mean, I don't say that lightly. Prayer is very important. And I do try to spend a lot of time in prayer and trying to hear God and just trying to do his will. But I think if I just feel like if I'm seeking God's will and I'm doing the best that I can, then his grace covers all of my errors. And I know I make a lot of them. Um, but I don't know how I do. I can only say from the grace of God, because if I was on my own, if I was back in the States, my life would be so less complicated and so much more routine and structure.
Hmm.
And I would be so much more comfortable. So I don't know why God likes to keep me on my toes and uncomfortable, but it seems like that's how it's been for 17 years. And so I've kind of gotten used to it. Like, I'll make plans for every day. I know exactly what, but then I also know that there's the possibility that this is not going to happen the way that I want it to. And I
Hmm.
have to deal with it. I mean, some days it irritates me, some days it upsets me, some days I'm thankful, and other days, but I just know every day I have to just give it to God and just be like, okay, God, whatever you bring me, let me even today, let me have a positive attitude, because I had a issue this morning, even like, I just want that trash can. It was over a trash can in the street, um, yeah, I just have to try every day and remind myself, give it to God. God's in control. And I'm a control freak. Every one of my friends will tell you that I am a control freak. Like, I have to have control. And I have to remind myself. One time I was organized right down to my church chairs. Like, I have a certain way that the chairs in my church have to be lined up. And I'll go through every Sunday. Like, my staff does a great job. To anyone else, they'll walk in and be like, wow, this church looks great, ready to go. No, me, nope, that chair leg is 2 inches too far forward. And so I have to go through and realign every chair in the church. And I was doing that one Sunday, and I was kind of fussing. My mom calls it fussing in your head. I was kind of fussing in my head, like, why is it so hard for these people to understand? Put the chairs on this line. Why is it so hard? And God said to me very clearly, he said, while you may be a perfectionist, you are not perfect. And
Hmm.
those words hit hard to me, because I thought, yeah, you're right. I'm not perfect. And first of all, I can't judge other people for not rising to my perfectionism that I think I have. And secondly, God doesn't expect perfection out of any of us. I think he just really wants us to do our best to obey him and do our best in our obedience, and his grace takes care of the rest. Because yeah, I'm far from perfect, but in my
Mhm.
mind, in my world, you know, everything about everything the way I want to do is perfect. Not that I'm perfect, but my ways are perfect. And
Yeah.
sometimes has to sit me down and say, listen, little girl, is not the way it is.
What is what does ministry look like right now? I know I've really enjoyed getting to see what you do over the years, different times, just for a short period of time, but what are you focused on right now?
We have 4 tiers that we're focused on. First is our food program, our child sponsorship, which is where this ministry for the last 10 years has been. We do sponsorships where we try to connect someone from the States to sponsor a child for $40 a month. And then that child gets a box of food every month. And it's enough food for them to eat 3 times a day. We do breakfast,
Wow.
lunch, and dinner items. So that was our main focus, was to provide food for these kids. Secondly, we want to touch them spiritually. So we have what we call Kids Club, which actually started to be our anti-gang program, because even that has changed so much. When I first moved here, the gangs were rampant and in complete control of this country. And so we were trying to first give our kids a place to hang out. We call it Kids Club because it's a clubhouse. And we wanted to give our kids a place to hang out rather than be on the streets, because the gangs were recruiting kids starting at the age of between 5 and 8. A lot of
Wow.
kids don't have dads in the homes. A lot of them don't have moms. So we have grandma raising 8 kids, and there's just no supervision. They're on the streets. So we were trying to keep them off the streets, and then we turned that into like a little Bible study, and that has grown. Now we have Kids Club every Saturday, and we have our little kids from 3 to 8 years old. They have their own club, their own classes where we do Bible study. They go to the park and they do an arts and crafts project. And then the older kids, the youth group, they do the same arts and crafts, Bible study, but we do sports camps with them: basketball, tennis, soccer. We've been doing overnight, like lock-ins, I guess that's what we call it in the United States, lock-ins with
Mm.
them, where kids from all over, from different communities. And here in El Salvador, right now, we're in a time of relaxation and peace because a lot of the gang members have been locked up. And
Mm.
so we're not as concerned right now about kids getting recruited, but there's still in El Salvador, every community is outlined by a gang line. There's different gangs who control different parts of the country. And so we
Mm.
have kids from all over different gang lines who come and just have made friends from
Wow.
other, where normally you wouldn't have the kids crossing over from one territory to another. So that's Kids Club. And then our biggest project right now is educational. We had, when COVID hit, now I don't know if COVID caused the problem or if it's just brought the problem to light, but we had a lot of kids who were 17 years old in the third grade, 15 years old in the third grade,
Mm.
a lot of kids. And then the law, once COVID ended, the law changed that if a child is more than 2 years behind in class, for example, a 17-year-old could no longer attend the fourth grade because they're just too old.
Mm.
Oh, and there's no GED. Well, there is a GED, kind of similar, but it's very difficult. So what we're doing is we rounded up those kids, and we've been working with them to get them back up to grade level. And then we have a Christian school here who is working with us. And once our kids are up to grade level, they take a placement test. So, for example, we just had 4 kids yesterday who took their placement test, and all of them placed on the 7th grade. 15-year-olds who started
Wow.
first grade now are in the 7th grade in just less than 2 years. So they'll start this month. They'll go to the private school to get acclimated, and then in January, our year goes from January to November. So in January, they'll start in the 7th grade, and they'll actually graduate by the time they're 18 or 19 years old. Instead of what was happening is by 15, these kids are done, dropped out of school, are illiterate, and there's no way of getting a job above what their parents do, which is selling peanuts on the street or washing
Mm.
windows on the street or begging. So it's actually been very successful. And
Mm.
we started, we had 13 kids, and we have 13 kids who are all under level. Now we have two who are in university. Um,
Wow.
one is going to be graduating next year. And then we have, I think right now we only have four kids left that haven't made grade level yet. So it's been very successful. And all of our kids in the Christian school all have A's and B's. There's nobody with not one low grade. So it's been such a successful program. And then of course socially is the last leg, is just, which I kind of touched on. But that's our ministry pretty much,
Mm.
in a wrapped up in a pretty bow. And
No, Beth,
oh,
that's amazing. Like I think about just years past. I mean, how many kids went through your ministry that perhaps they're not in prison today because of the kids club, right?
right, right. Yeah.
What was that like facilitating that type of thing with kids coming from different gang regions? Did you ever have any like issues with the gangs yourself or that like like
You know, they say ignorance is bliss, and I applies to me. I mean, like I said, I didn't prepare before I came here. I didn't know anything about gangs or danger, but I didn't know anything about that when I came. I just was like, here I am. And I often say there's a reason why God called a gringa. There's a reason why God
mm,
is using an American, because I'm not privy. We did have some concerns. Some of our parents were like, well, my daughter can't go because kids from Sacamila are going to be there and that's dangerous. And so we did have some of those
mm,
issues where and it's not mandatory that the kids, we never mandate that the kids have to come and worship or anything, because I think that should be a very personal decision.
mm,
But we did have to take some time to convince parents that we had a house. If you've been here, everything is behind cast iron and razor wire,
mm,
but we had a house with just, I don't even know how to explain. Our gate was kind of open. It was slats and you could see through. And we ended up putting a whole cast iron solid gate around our house so that parents would feel comfortable with their kids
mm,
in, with, so nobody could see what was happening behind our doors when we first started. Um, so yeah, there, in hindsight, I kind of think like, wow, God really. I mean, there were times there's one area that's kind of right on the line between the two gangs, and I used to walk by myself, just going door to door, talking to the kids, hanging out. I had no clue. I had no clue. It was like, one time I was down in the Central Market, and some lady, shop lady, came out and told me, you got to get out of here, they're cutting people's heads off. And it was no joke. Down the street there was a body with I was like, oh my gosh, okay, let me, so I did. And I didn't go back until recently. I mean, I haven't been down there for years, but now it's a lot safer, so I have been a
mm,
couple times. I still don't just wander down by myself, but I just was never afraid, because I don't know if it was just something God put over me, because had I been afraid, most of the kids in our program wouldn't be in our program, because I wouldn't
mm,
have gone to reach out to them. Or if it was just like, I just didn't know to be afraid, much like a little toddler sometimes wanders into the street to get a ball, not realizing the danger of traffic.
mm,
That could have been
mm,
me too. I could have just been not aware, or God just, well, either way, God definitely kept me safe from, I've had to change houses a couple of times because gang members had threatened, like I had mentioned my friend and his family, and they had told him that if I continued here, they would have to start paying. Gangs take money, and they would start
mm,
having to pay because the American could afford to give them money. So they had to move me a couple of times in the middle of the night, switching houses. Um, I didn't understand any of that at the time. I just
mm.
trusted that they knew what they were doing, and it all led. It's all for God's good, and He definitely kept me safe. And we're definitely in a safe place today, in a gated community with guards outside. So
Mm.
that's better. But when I first was here, I was just like, oh, whatever house I could afford, wherever it is, I don't care. Put me where. So
Wow. Well, man, Beth, you've been down there 17 years. What would you say? Like, what would you tell yourself 17 years ago, or what's the biggest thing that you've learned?
um gosh, what have I learned? I've learned a lot of lessons. There's been a lot of hurt. And I would just say to my 17 years ago that trust God, don't trust man. Not that I'm not saying that people always let you down, but there have been a lot of hurts and disappointments over the
Mm.
years by me depending on people to do this. And so I think right off the bat, if I had just always just worried about what God wanted and not worried about people pleasing, I would have been better off. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But I definitely was focused. You know, as a missionary, you have to raise your support and you have, I feel like, I guess this is my lesson. I felt like if I offended one person, maybe they wouldn't support. And it's not even about me. It's about, you know, we have this food program, and I always think, man, if I offend them and they stop sending their money, that kid is going to go hungry because that
Mm.
goes to their food. And I have that weight on my shoulders. And so I think that's what I did, a lot of people pleasing, trying not to lose support for the kids. And you can't. I mean, you can't, because everybody is different and everybody thinks differently. They have different political views. I'm very political. I love it. But you notice in the last, I took a seminary once. I don't even remember who, if it was a seminary, you may have even told me, I don't know. Somebody said, stop putting your political stuff on Facebook because you're losing support. And they were right. They,
No, I didn't tell you that, but I pretty much stopped doing that a few years ago because I just would get exhausted.
oh,
And then I'm the type of person like I like to beat a dead horse. So I if I'm in a conversation with somebody, it will overtake my mind like the whole day. And so I just I can't do that.
that I was getting too,
It
like,
drains my energy.
and then you think, how can I fix it? Oh my gosh, I said what I meant. They hated what I said. Now how do I fix it? You know, so the only way to fix it is to go against what you said at first, but then you're not being true to yourself. And so, yeah, that's what I would say. Just trust God, because there was one situation where I don't remember what was happening, but someone said, you know, if you do that, this church isn't going to support you anymore. But whatever it was, I just remember being dead set against it. I don't remember the specifics, but I remember being dead set against it. And I was just like, it just came out of my mouth to this person, was like, well, I don't depend on this church. I depend on God. And that was it. The church was gone. The person was gone. The support was gone. And I,
Oh my.
oh no, what did I just do? But yeah, that's what I would tell myself. Just let God worry about it. Just, you know, be yourself and let God deal with it.
Hmm. Oh, that's good. Let me ask you this, Beth. What would you say to somebody who is the sometimes I don't know, maybe I'm creating this, but sometimes you kind of can pick up like a negative vibe that people have about short-term missions, like, oh, you're just going on a vacation type thing or whatever. It's like, but then I see someone like you and God used a short-term thing. Anyway, if somebody's thinking about becoming a missionary, what would you say to them? Would you say to them to follow your path, or would you say go learn Spanish first?
Well, I would say both. Um, if God is calling you, then do it. But if God is, hear him and don't try to fight it. See, my problem was I tried to fight it. Instead of preparing, I fought it. I could have used that year or so to prepare, because
Mm.
ultimately I did obey and I did come here. But I spent a year of my life fighting it, arguing with God and telling him I wasn't going to do it, while my life systematically was falling apart, because God was saying, this life is not going to be here for you much longer. You need to, um, but yeah, I just say obey. Obedience is everything. And it's scary and it doesn't feel comfortable. It doesn't feel good sometimes. But in the end, it's worth it. You know, serving God and pleasing God is what we're here for. And anything else just doesn't give you the ultimate experience of your life. So I would say, yes, follow me, follow my life experiences and go, but also listen right away. I always tell people immediate obedience is best. Okay,
Mm.
God, you want me to be a missionary? I'm going to go. And then take that time to prepare. Don't spend your time like, yeah, God, I hear you. But, you know, it's like the man in
Mm.
the Bible who went back to his family. God said, leave your family and come with me. And he said, well, let me go
Mm.
back and take care of. And that's what I
Mm.
did. I went back
Mm.
to take care of everything. And I lost who knows what I lost in that year, or maybe God just, he knew I was going
Yeah.
to battle him, because I always do. Even today I do. Um, so yeah, but definitely short-term mission trips can be both. We've had people come down here very serious, serving the kids and working, and they do a great job. And unfortunately, we've had some who just come on vacation, and either way, we're happy to have you here. We love to have the work done. But I could tell you a whole, this is where, this is one of those things where you got to just be quiet, because you don't want to offend anyone too much for you. But I could tell you some stories about some
No, I
mission.
want names, Beth. I want names.
Well, like
No.
Pastor Mark, you do an amazing job with your people. Let's just leave it at that. But we've had some incredible, yeah. Let's just leave it at that, because I don't want to lose more support.
How would you, I mean, in the business world, I think it's easier to kind of determine quote unquote success, but in ministry, is that something you think about? Like, is that even a word that crosses your mind, or how, at the end of the day, when you go to sleep, when do you feel good about the day?
Um, I feel good about my day if I feel like I've fulfilled God's, I don't know how to put it. I don't want to, God's expectations of me. Like, did I put my
Mm.
best? Did I do the best
Mm.
what God wanted me to do? Because I can't speak for every ministry and every missionary. In my ministry, it's a thankless job. And
Mm.
it's sad to say that. And I don't mean to offend our families. I mean, they deal with so much, and they're stressed out about, things that Americans would never even, couldn't even possibly imagine that, being stressed out over. So to come and say thank you, I get it, is probably not top of your list, and I don't need to be thanked. But there are some days where people are just very ungrateful, or especially when they're disrespectful towards my staff. Me, I don't care. Talk to me how you want, but sometimes they're pretty disrespectful to my staff, because we got 10 beans less than our neighbors did, or things like
Mm.
that, which I kind of can understand, because you're stressed, but at the same time, it's a thankless job. So at the end of the day, I can't measure what is success. Did 176 kids get food boxes this month? Yes, they did.
Wow.
So that to me is success. Did this mother speak meanly to me, or didn't was unappreciative? Yes, but that doesn't mean I failed at something. That just means there's a condition between her heart and God, so that's for them. But at the end of the day, if I can honestly say I woke up, I did everything that God asked me to do to the best of my ability, then that's success. And of course, I love, when a child accepts Christ. Of course,
Mm.
that's what I live for. And, two of our kids yesterday passed their placement test and entered the seventh grade after only,
Wow.
that success. Those stories are few and far between. But I don't know. If I did the best I can do, then that's what God expects me to do. And then the prizes, the rewards are not supposed to be here on earth. There might be years before little Johnny or Jose um, shows fruit from what we've taught him. It might be years. We've planted
Mm.
seeds. It could be when he's 50 years old, or it could be tomorrow. We don't know. So I think we're successful. We're
Mm.
following Christ. We're doing what he wants us to do.
Wow. Beth, that's awesome what you're doing. Thank you so much. You are impacting the generations.
We're trying to do. Generations is in our name here anyway.
Mm.
In the
Mm.
States, it's Esther's Heart Ministry. Here it's Iglesia por los Generaciones, the Church of the Generations. And that's one
Wow.
God has, from the first vision I had about coming down here to this day, he's always spoken that word to me, generations. So
Wow.
that's our hope.
That's awesome. Beth, thanks for spending time with me.
Thank you, Chad. Thanks.
Bye.